Thank you for pressing start on episode 56 of Underplayed, KZUM's indie video game podcast. Today we have 2 secret games, followed by a review of our featured game, Blasphemous. Here on Underplayed, we review indie games of all kinds, the games with small budgets but big hearts, the lesser-known experiences with imaginative ideas. I'm Bo Po, and now joining me is a guy with Big Dad Mode energy, taking you on in River City. He's here to spread joy and transform a toy. It's your berserk boy, DiscoCola. What is going on?
Not much, Bopo. I'm excited to be here, premiering a new season of Underplayed with you. And if I am being untrue, may I be donned in mourning black. How are you, Bopo?
I'm doing just fine, my grievous miracle. Those are references to our featured game, Blasphemous, which it feels like it's been a long time coming.
Yeah.
Feels like this game has deserved to be on our show for way too long. It's our kickoff featured game for season 6 of Underplayed.
What a game.
What a game. We have lots to talk about when it comes to Blasphemous. We've both just been playing the heck out of it, and we'll talk all about that in the featured game section. But at the start of this episode, since this is a new season of Underplayed, it's Underplayed season 6. Hackers. I actually had to think about, wait, what's the number again? Is it 5 or 6? It's 6. Since this is a new season of Underplayed, DiscoCola, how does this show work? What is this show?
Yeah, first of all, welcome aboard. Thank you for tuning in. If this is your starting point, what an appropriate but also, strange starting point with Blasphemous. All the same. Here's how the show works. Every episode, Bopo and I will each prepare what we call a secret game, and we will come to the recording. We will not tell each other in advance what we've played, and these are indie games that we haven't played on the show before, and usually lesser known in the indie universe. So you've got your more well-known indie games, and those go to the featured game slot, which is what Blasphemous is for this episode. But before we talk about our featured game, we each come with what we call a secret game, and we'll review that, each taking turns ahead of the Blasphemous review.
Yes. And this is a podcast all about indie games, as Disco said. So we celebrate those games that sort of expand our imagination of what games can do. And B, since this is a new season of Underplayed, too, we want to really quickly mention what we played between seasons, or just were there any fun activities you did too between seasons? I don't know that I have an answer for that, but what did you get up to between season 5 and 6, I guess?
Oh gosh. I mean, even when we were on our actual break, there was just Underplayed stuff going on pretty much the whole time. So it kind of felt like there wasn't a break. So I don't really remember where the break actually fell.
Agreed. I think the break was technically 2 weeks or something.
Yeah.
After all was said and done.
But I don't know that I got up to any fun activity. I rearranged my office. Ultimately didn't really help with the feng shui of where I play my video games that much. But I did do that real quick. And as far as games I played, I didn't have time for much, man. I played Penny's Big Breakaway, and I didn't get to finish that.
You haven't finished? Okay.
I haven't finished it.
When you say you haven't finished, you just haven't rolled credits?
I haven't rolled credits. Okay. I think I'm halfway through the game. The game's, if you're going for completion, it's a lot bigger than I was expecting.
Oh.
I'm hoping that we'll both be talking about that game someday, but we'll see. And then, before I could finish Penny's Big Breakaway, Berserk Boy came out, which is definitely something I had to try on release day. So I did play and finish that. I don't know if I didn't complete it, but I did beat it, and it was a ton of fun, and yeah. I liked it quite a lot.
And you did stream that?
I did stream that, yep, and that's another one that I hope we'll be talking about someday, but again, we'll see.
At least one of us will be.
Yeah. It will appear on Underplayed someday.
But you were highly anticipating Berserk Boy because of its genre and its influences, right?
Yeah, it's very much a Mega Man-like, and inspired specifically by Mega Man ZX, which is one of my favorite Mega Mans. Mm-hmm. So I was really looking forward to that. Has a lot of high speed input too. Like you can really go for some high action, and yeah, it was a pretty good time. And I was not necessarily disappointed. I did want to say I mentioned an Easter egg back in the Jack Move episode.
Okay.
And I wanted to wait until Berserk Boy came out because there is a little Berserk Boy figurine in the game Jack Move.
There is?
Yeah.
Really?
I don't know that there's any sort of specific partnership between the
Oh.
two developers, but yeah, if you go to what's her name's house, I can't even remember her name now. But if you go to her house, she has like this little locker, and inside is a little Berserk Boy figurine.
Really? A Jack Move came out in 2022-ish?
Yeah.
There, like kind of later in 2022. So this was at least a full year before the release of Berserk Boy. So I guess Berserk Boy's been worked on for a while.
Oh yeah, Berserk Boy's been on my radar for a couple years.
Wow. So that always fascinates me. Like, is that just reverence? Is that them just going out of their way to put a reference in the game? Do they know each other?
I don't know. Yeah.
They might. I mean, that could be a thing. But I love when we see that. I love little references and Easter eggs to other games too.
It's a good time, especially when like the game's not even out yet. So that was pretty cool.
That is cool.
I saw that. I'm like,
well, a lot of people
I know that.
A lot of people would see that and just think, oh, that's a cool figurine.
Yeah.
They wouldn't know that it's a reference to something if they don't know about Berserk Boy.
But yeah, anytime like Berserk Boy would pop up on my Twitter feed, I'd be like, oh yes, I love seeing these updates. So cool. It's been in my mind for a long time.
Does it feel kind of surreal that Berserk Boy is out now, since it is something you've been anticipating for a while?
Yeah, it does. There's only a handful of games that I like followed the development like that for, and one of them was like Unsighted. And so when Unsighted finally came out, I was like, oh, I can't believe it's finally here,
Mm-hmm.
So that was pretty cool.
Yeah, it can be odd because like you still hold on to that feeling of anticipation in a way. Like it's hard to strip that from yourself sometimes. Like, oh, it's out now.
Yeah, I agree. I can play this. What?
Yeah, I feel that way sometimes about movies, like Dune Part 2. I just saw a month ago.
Yeah,
at time of recording, and it's like, I've been waiting for that since 2021, and now it's out. That's so weird that it's out.
But yeah, so that's pretty much all I had time to get up to. I tried to, God, did I even try to do any trophy cleanup? I don't think I did. I think I went straight from Sifu straight into Penny's Big Breakaway.
Okay.
Anyways, I've taken enough time. It's your turn. It's your turn. I want to know what you played.
I played several games that I was happy to get to. So the first thing I did was I did go back to Sifu, our 10th featured game from season 5, and I platinumed that.
Congratulations.
Thank you. I loved that game. It was like number 3 on my list of top 5 games from last season. And I had to do a bunch of miscellaneous things. So I had to finish sparing everybody. I had to spare Yang. That was the last one I needed to do. And Onimochi and you had done that already. You had both spared everybody. You had gotten the second ending. So I attained Wuda, and I saw that ending, and I really liked that second ending. And I had to do a bunch of miscellaneous things. Like I had to get a cumulative 20,000 points.
Yeah, that's the only one I'm missing right now.
So that one isn't too bad because you can use modifiers to get there.
Oh, okay.
And I think you can play on student mode. Well, I don't know if student mode gives you less points.
I think it does. I think your multiplier like caps at like 3 times.
Okay, you can play on like whatever the normal mode's called. And Disciple? No, I forget what it's called.
It is Disciple. Yeah.
It is it? Okay. And you can activate those modifiers. That makes it really easy. And then there are some stages that are just easier for scoring points in. I forget which one I did it in. It might have been
Please
the
don't
club.
say the club. God. I knew you were going to say that.
Yeah, I think it was the club simply because of the number of enemies and the number of shortcuts where you can get all the enemies in the shortcut, but then retrace your steps to get more points, if that makes sense.
All right.
That was fun.
Well, it's time for your little jingle,
my little jingle
prize.
Since whenever one of us earns a platinum trophy, we're going to hear a little celebratory little trophy sound.
We've missed a lot for you. Well, there were a lot of platinums we didn't.
We'll go back someday, maybe. No, that's that.
No, we won't.
Here we go.
No.
I don't think
that doesn't have the grandeur I'm looking for.
Oh, that's the one.
That's the one.
There we go.
Yeah.
There we go. Oh.
No, you only get that one after all the arenas.
Ow.
Bopo.
Ouch. Ow. Then, speaking of platinums, there's a game I'm very close to platinuming, and it is a game that I streamed on Twitch. Both of us stream a lot on Twitch. Disco is twitch.tv/DiscoCola. I'm twitch.tv/BO__PO. And one game that I was really excited to get to was Demon's Souls, which on my channel I call Demon's Ols, just as like a little inside joke because of the double S going on. So Demon's Ols, this is kind of like the first Souls-like game. This predated Dark Souls. So this was the precursor to Dark Souls that came out in 2009. It was then remade by Blue Point Games for the PlayStation 5 in 2020. And I played the remake on stream. I finished most of the game on stream, finished it off stream. I need to beat like 5 more bosses again. I need to get their souls, their demons' souls, and then I need to turn them in to get the last handful of spells. They're called miracles to get the last trophy I need. And then my platinum will pop. So I have all but 1 trophy left in this very long game.
Gosh.
Do you want to care to guess how many hours I've put into Demon's Souls over the past few months?
In the past few months, I'm going to say 63.
Very close. I'm at around 70 hours.
Okay.
And if I had followed this guide correctly, which I wasn't looking at closely enough, I could have done it in maybe around 50. So that's unfortunate.
I struggle with that because, like, when you're playing a game, you're like, yeah, I'm a completionist. I want to get all the stuff. I want to, find everything. But at the same time, especially with like reviews for Underplayed, it's like I want to experience the game as a player, and so I don't always look up guides, and that would have cut down on a lot of time for both of the games I'm going to talk about today.
It's tough. I struggle with that too. And I know there's always that thought in the back of my mind of there's a developer or whole team of developers that made this game with the intent for a player to approach it for the first time without any assistance. And what is that experience going to be like for them? And I always want to preserve that as much as I can. I will take a peeksy poo at the trophies ahead of time. And I'll see, like, is there anything missable that's very easy to miss that I can read up on without getting majorly spoiled? That's always a thing I think both of us look out for, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. So I really like this game. I've played just a few other Souls-like games. Bloodborne is still far and away my favorite, but I really appreciate Demon's Souls. I'd probably give it like maybe an 8 or an 8.5. Okay. Like I'm having a good time. It actually kind of relaxes me in an odd way. I don't know how that's possible, but this is one of
I'm happy for you.
This is one of the most satisfying and fun games that I've had the pleasure of streaming.
Okay.
I've had a great time streaming it. Lots of moments where something jumps out at me and scares the crap out of me. And I yell, and I find that so fun. Another game I was able to stream that's much shorter is Pikmin 2. This is the Switch version. I think pound for pound, I might just prefer Pikmin 1 slightly to it because Pikmin 1 is a much more focused game. Pikmin 2 has so many caves and so many treasures. I don't feel enticed to get the 100%. I appreciate the additions in 2, like the new kinds of Pikmin, white and purple. That's fun. But I'm probably around like a 7.5 or an 8 out of 10.
Okay.
Really like that game. And then finally, Bat Boy. Bat Boy was my jealous game from season 5. It's the secret game you played that I really wanted to play. And as we sit down, I just finished this game on stream hours ago. And you were there. You were there watching me.
Yep.
So I don't know. What did you think of? What did you perceive? I guess in my playthrough of Bat Boy. Did it look like I was having fun? I think
so.
I was having fun.
Yeah. I think I can tell that you didn't like it quite as much as I did, but I could tell you were having fun. And what really stood out to me is the different like movement mechanics that we really latched onto. Because you were really into like the wall jump a lot to get over obstacles, where I was using the like string lasso thing.
Yeah, like the grapple hook
thing. I use that like a bunch to save myself in a lot of those
Interesting.
jumps.
Yeah.
So
I was always more hesitant to use that because that uses up your stamina.
Yeah. But yeah, so it was interesting to me to see the different ways that such a simple game can play between 2 people.
Yeah. So
because there's so much movement mechanics in there.
This game has somewhere around 10 different bosses that you beat, and then they give you a new ability after you beat them. Like your friend that you rescue basically teaches you a new movement mechanic. And this game is just a very simple looking sort of throwback 2D action platformer. But you end up learning like a dozen different moves, and then I was forgetting how to input some of those moves.
Mhm.
I remembered how to do the grappling hook at all times, but because I preferred saving my stamina, I would forget about the grappling hook sometimes, and then I'd go, oh, that's how I get past this screen, of course.
Right.
Whereas you probably sailed right through. But yeah, I had a ton of fun. You gave this a 10 out of 10. I wouldn't give it a 10 out of 10 just because 10 out of 10 games chemically alter me. And Bat Boy didn't chemically alter me, but that doesn't mean that I didn't have a great time. This is a great game. It feels amazing. It feels so good.
I told you the controls are
They're perfect.
like perfect.
Oh, they're perfect.
Yeah.
It's the way you swing on enemies to jump off their heads, and you can chain together swings.
And that sound effect that it gives you.
Yes.
It sounds like a bounce.
It does. It does, yes. And you can deflect things. I loved, like when I was a kid, I played some Star Wars video games where you could like deflect laser blasts.
I would just sit there and do that for a while. Yeah, forget the goal.
Yes, you can do that in Bat Boy. And so if you like games sort of like Mega Man, or you like platformers and action games, what I thought about Bat Boy that was really fun is it's a great mixture of the two. It's like 50% platforming, 50% action for me. I think that balance is really well achieved in Bat Boy. So I had a great time, and I have no regrets about picking it for my Jealous game. Like I know that was the right choice.
Perfect. You got some stuff done.
I did get some stuff done, and I'll still work on some stuff here and there as we keep going. We're going to keep going, but before we move on, if you're listening to Underplayed right now, thank you, and we love you. If you haven't already, please consider giving us a follow and a 5-star rating on Spotify and Apple Podcasts. It should only take a few seconds, and we'd really appreciate it. And if you have a friend who likes indie games, maybe share our podcast with them too. It's time for our secret games.
Secret games.
Secret games.
I know you're playing without me.
Secret games.
Well, I'm here to tell you, baby.
Secret games.
I've been playing too.
Secret games.
In Secret Games, we each play an indie game in secret, and then we prepare a review for this recording. I don't know what DiscoCola has been playing the last few weeks. He doesn't know what I've been playing. This is a surprise we're revealing in this very moment. We can choose any indie game as long as it hasn't been covered on Underplayed before. We'll start with you, as always, Disco. Let the mystery be no more. Reveal your secret game for episode 56 of Underplayed.
All right. My secret game this episode is a Metroidvania I've been looking forward to for a long time, developed by Old Moon and published by Humble Games, and that game is called Ghost Song.
There's a story to this place.
My friends are stuck here.
Nobody should be alone.
Is anyone there? Hello?
I am a thing you dreamed up, and you are a thing I dreamed.
Oh, you know what? I think I have heard of this. I don't think this is on my list of secret games, but I recognize the name.
Oh, perfect.
I recognize the name. Awesome. Well, I see you have sent me a trailer, so I will give that a look while you keep talking.
All right. In Ghost Song, you wake up on a moon called Lorien and take on the role of something that is simply called Dead Suit, as you're named in the subtitles. And pretty immediately, you're just sort of thrown into it. You can go left or right, and if you go left, like me and probably most people that played Limbo do, you will quickly learn that you need to go right. Because
very innovative.
Yeah.
It's just very new. Never heard of it.
But yeah, just like much of Lorien, there are hostile creatures ready to assault you right away. And many of them are much, much, much stronger than you. And they put a couple of them right to the left of your starting point. So go right.
Go right, you can't be wrong.
Yeah.
Ghost Song.
From there, your goal is simply to explore, to find something. Search for a purpose. You don't start with a purpose in this game.
So
You just
there's
wake up.
no cutscene. There's no framing device. There's no inciting incident.
You're awake. You're a dead suit and you woke up.
Okay.
You will encounter horrifying creatures, robots, androids, remnants of these technological facilities, wrecked ships, corpses of humans and aliens alike. Eventually, you will come across the shipwreck. This is a large encampment inhabited by a ship crew and their ship called the Gambler. And it's here where you receive your primary goal, and that is to acquire 5 ship parts from other shipwrecks to repair this ship.
So this is Pikmin.
Yeah, kinda. Pikmin never looked quite like this, but probably about as many dead bodies, I suppose.
I guess, yeah. Just
And in this encampment, in addition to receiving your goal, you also receive something of a name. It's not something that sticks. Your subtitle name never changes, but most of the characters in the game will call you Blue or Little Blue. And in addition to receiving a name and your goal, this is also where you receive friends if you want them.
Really?
Yes.
Oh, so it's a wholesome game.
It is.
Sorry.
It has wholesome things in it.
Sure.
But apart from all that, this has all the things you'd expect from any Metroidvania, especially one that leads more on the Metroid side of things. A variety of monsters, bosses, obstacles, and shortcuts. As for Blue, which is what I'm going to call her throughout most of this review, you have your default arm cannon. You can also gain weapon modules. These sort of act as your heavy weapon. Think your missiles from Metroid or other sort of cannon types. You have equipable modules, which sort of act like the charms in Hollow Knight, which give you little buffs or bonuses or sort of like passive skills. And then you also gain access to a variety of melee weapons, and these are nice to use while your arm cannon is overheating. And then lastly, you gain access to permanent mobility upgrades like you would in most Metroidvania type games. You will also, throughout the game, gain currency called nanogel from defeating enemies or finding them laying on the ground throughout the world. And you will use this to level up your suit, which will in turn increase your stats, increase your stamina. It will allow you to equip more modules at one time. So think of like charm slots, but you get to keep buying them.
Okay.
So there's
Nice.
not like a finite number.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
That's really cool. I really like what I'm hearing so far.
Oh, okay, good.
Yeah.
Little Blue will then use all of those traits and mechanics to bring ship parts from the far edges of the map back to the Gambler. And that's Ghost Song.
Okay. No, it's very easy to follow. I get it.
Yeah.
Just your Metroidvania with lots of different things to find.
Yeah. And there's more depth to it than I described, mostly involving the humans, and I'll get to that. But
it does seem like it starts with that subtler approach.
Yes. Yeah, very much so.
It eases you in, if you will.
I
I
think
mean, it
so.
might be hard
Yeah.
at the start, but like as far as what's going on.
Eases you, maybe pushes you into the deep end is a better catchphrase to use here. Yeah.
Mhm.
So here's what I think Ghost Song does really successfully. First off, I've had this on my shelf for almost a year. I haven't touched it a single time, but what I have done is listen to the music before, and I love it. This music is so good. It's really good. It's just my total jam. I love it so much. I think you would like it too, Bopo. Like, I highly recommend at least checking out the music. That was a little bit of a good motivator for me to turn it on this season compared to like just waiting.
Yeah, I put the trailer on in one of my ears a second ago, and I can tell that it's got a good sound.
It's very good the whole time.
Okay.
Next, I really like the world of Lorien. It's terrifying and dangerous. A lot of this world has like horrible looking spores. The monsters look like a nightmare, but there are pockets of serenity too, like small ponds, hidden trees, just small moments of respite. And there's also just these curious like mysteries in the background, just subtle hints at something else happening. And on top of all of that, the world will shift in sort of subtle ways as you progress through the game. So, for example, after you drop off every ship part, you go to sleep. You take a nap.
Mhm.
So maybe for an example, you drop off the second ship part and you may revisit an area to find that there are like much larger monsters there than before, or maybe a new kind of corpse that stays there permanently is now a fixture of that piece of the map. So things change over time, never like to the point where it's greatly affecting the map.
But it's noticeable.
It's noticeable. Now, while I don't really like Little Blue's mobility very much at the start of the game, once you do start getting some of those mobility upgrades, it does really start to feel great to control Blue. So once you start getting the dash and the sprint, the game starts to open up and it feels much better to control. I also really like the extra stuff in this game. There are some really challenging optional bosses and fascinating exploration quests you can do that will add a lot to the world, solve some of the mysteries, and add a ton of depth to like various NPC characters you meet. Which brings me to probably like my absolute favorite part of the game, and that is the NPC characters. The characters in this game are just so beautiful and vulnerable, and they all just have such great character writing.
Mhm.
And much of it is delivered so effectively with like great voice acting. I looked at the cast list, and Kira Buckland, who we mentioned in River City Girls, appears
Oh,
in this game.
nice.
But yeah, these characters are great and represent so many different struggles that people face regarding identity and purpose and self-worth. Like Mutt, he's heartbreaking. He's just someone who's desperate for camaraderie, someone that feels just a fraction of what he feels so intensely about something. And I didn't get to finish his quest line, but I can already tell that there's something just like so sad waiting for us at the end of it. Molly, she just wants to feel useful. She's the one best suited for tinkering and engineering, but all of her experiments, they just keep failing. She's assigned a role that she just isn't suited for. Pasha is a young woman. She's just trying to find any sort of beauty in this world where she can, including within ourselves, within Blue. She's so focused on our voice, and she's focused on making sure that we find the beauty in ourselves as we travel this world. And like Roper is the one that gives us our main goal, and he's like the de facto leader of the group. And we mention as much to him, and we get to know each other. And when we mention this, it's sort of like a gut punch to him, because the crew is meant to be organized in this like equal across the board way, mutual aid. And he says, no captains ever, but falls into this role of a natural leader anyway. And he's just like struggling with the ideals of social structure and how the reality of the situation and the social dynamics can distort what is. And yet he remains firm. No captains, not ever. And it's so beautiful. There's so many more. Raven, she's an android whose body is like destroyed in the crash. And she spends the whole game tinkering away in her lab trying to build her new body. And she talks about all these like little things that she loves about herself. And, the shape of her nose and like one of her arms being like half a centimeter longer than the other. And how she's going to miss all those things, and how she's so scared of who she's going to be in her new body. And she's worried about losing herself. And sorry. Yeah, everybody's just, it's just so beautiful.
I'm so glad you mentioned that, because just looking at the trailer, all I see is Blue exploring this like unknown world. I don't get a sense of that. And a trailer can't tell us everything, but I think that's a really great distinction to make in a game like a Metroidvania where, sometimes we have favorite characters in games. But Metroidvanias, a lot of our favorite Metroidvanias can sometimes have our favorite cast of characters. It sounds like that's what's going on here.
Yeah.
Just like an array of people, an ensemble of people that just have like lots of really emotionally impactful stories. That's awesome.
Yeah, it's really good. And there's so much more. I mentioned most of the people because they're all so great. But when you add this to like that haunting music, and these people are just letting down their guard with you, there's just this really authentic sense of hope, but also sadness. And throughout most of the game, I felt like I was hearing the final words of a dying stranger. And I think there's a really good chance that this game was actually built around these characters first. And the game of choice just happens to be a Metroidvania with a lot of horrible monsters in it. And then the last thing that I really like about this game that every Metroidvania needs, and that is a good map. I think the map here is really great. And in a game where I often feel directionless, the map is the best indicator of where to go. Like, yes, I have my 5 ship parts marked on the map right away, but how get, where go, what jump? Well, you explore, go in every direction until you hit a dead end. An obstacle you can't overcome. And as the game progresses and as you get more and more of those mobility upgrades, you can revisit each dead end. And best of all, like our featured game, the map will always show you if there is another exit to said room on the map. So if you see an unexplored path, maybe it's time to head back there. And maybe your current set of abilities are enough to get through that dead end that you couldn't get through before.
That sounds like a non-negotiable with Metroidvanias. Like
You would
the map,
think.
the map should give you that inclination about what's going on.
You would
that
think.
hint about what's going on.
Doesn't always happen, but it does here, and it's done pretty well for the most part. That aside, there are still things I don't like about Ghost Song. I think it takes a strangely large amount of time to get used to the controls at the beginning. And even after I'd played for a while, I was still kind of like pushing the wrong button for certain actions in some really high stakes situations that ultimately did me in multiple times. And then speaking of high stakes situations, I mentioned it briefly, but your arm cannon overheats. This is a mechanic in the game, and you can equip modules that reduce the effect, but it really can bite you in the ass big time in some really tough boss battles. And on top of that, your heavy weapon module runs on a meter, and you also have a stamina meter, which depletes when you dash multiple times, or when you sprint, or use your melee weapon.
You cannot button mash.
Yeah, you definitely can't button mash. They all do refill over time, but a lot of these bosses, they just hit really hard and are difficult, if not impossible to deal with, if more than 2 of your meters are depleted at a time. Like it gets real hairy real quick. And then on top of that, another complaint I have is there's a certain lack of feedback in the combat for the game. I think Ghost Song just needs a little something more when you take damage. Like sometimes you get that little like dip in audio that movies will do when someone gets punched in the head or something.
Yeah, like a doom.
Yeah, it's like a little doom, and then everything is kind of like going through a little kind of filter like that, you know. But you need a little bit more. There's no controller rumble. There's no noticeable slowdown, and if there is a screen shake, it could be a bit more. But because of this and a small invincibility window, I can be tanking a lot of damage before I even know I've even taken any at all. Yeah, Ghost Song borrows a lot from Metroid on the Metroidvania side of things, but I wish they hadn't borrowed that part.
Yeah, fair.
Another thing I don't like is something that I've mentioned already briefly. I often feel directionless, and I can always see, like I said, where the 5 ship parts are, but until I travel back to the closest dead end, I don't actually know which of the 5 parts I should be going after. Like the game sort of implies that you can take your pick and go after any at any given time, but the game's a little bit more linear than you might expect. I think the last 2 maybe you could pick in any order, but as far as like the first 3, you kind of need the mobility upgrade from 1 to get to the mobility upgrade from 2, you know, and so on and so on. So yeah, and on top of that, the sections on the map, when like you open the map in your menu, the different areas aren't labeled, which is really hard if your NPC mentions an area that you need to go back to.
Yeah.
Or you're looking at a guide and it says, you find this in, you know, Falstaff or whatever.
Yeah. Where is that?
Where is
how
that?
do I even know?
Yeah.
And just sometimes that's how we can memorize things better is if we can look at the map and know where it is on the map, but also have a name to reference it in our minds.
Right.
That can be helpful just for ourselves, you know, no guide or NPC quests involved.
Right. instead of just, and the name of the area pops up on the screen when you get there.
Okay.
But that's not enough for me to remember.
I might take a screenshot of the map and like write out what they are.
Yeah,
on my phone or whatever.
that might be helpful. Yeah. And then my last notable dislike is something I've mentioned in a few other games, but the characters and monsters are all kind of like rigged on that puppet tooly look, which is not always my favorite. I do think Ghost Song has really strong art direction, and that is why I bought it, but the puppet tool always just kind of takes me out of the game a little bit. However, I suppose like this must be an easy way to develop games, so I suppose if it's between puppet tool rigging and just not having the game at all, I'd rather have Ghost Game exist. You know?
It's still valid. Like what you say is still accurate about the art direction being really strong. I'm still getting the sense of like that this place is doing things with environments and lighting and smoke effects and particles. Like lots of other things are going on to inform the visual style. And this looks like it has a very strong visual identity.
Yeah,
all the same.
It does. You're absolutely right, and you're picking up on a lot of stuff that I wasn't expecting in the game. Ghost Game is a Metroidvania that adequately checks all the Metroidvania boxes, but it really puts its soul into the art direction, the music, and most of all, its characters. I'm drawn in with that art, and I stay to make sure all of my new friends can leave this hostile moon. I'm invested in them, and I can't let them down. Getting things to work just right for combat is frustrating at times, and I did gently reintroduce my hand to a table hop, but only once, only one time.
Reintroduce, he says.
Struggling with direction is a bit of a pain point, but perhaps quite accurate to the more classic Metroid games. You know your goal, but it's up to you to find it. I won't rate this quite as high as some other Metroidvanias, and even though I put it higher on my Type 100 than some really highly rated Underplayed games, I'm going to settle at about an 8.5, I think.
8.5. Awesome. Watching this gameplay is also reminding me of a newer Metroidvania called Ultros, which both of us, I think, have been interested in. Ultros kind of looks like this, but maybe more psychedelic. That's another one to check out, maybe. If you liked Ghost Song, or if you liked Ultros, maybe check out Ghost Song. But I'm giving you that recommendation as someone who's played neither. I've played the demo for one of them. So, take that for what it's worth. And then, you picked a Metroidvania on the episode where we're reviewing a Metroidvania for our featured game. I'm assuming that when we get to Axiom Verge 2 later this season, that might be another opportunity for you to play another Metroidvania for your secret game. I'm not going to assume too hard, but
let me pull up my list and remind myself, because I don't even remember.
And you don't have
now.
to reveal. But I'm also wondering, is this season going to be the season of the Metroidvania for you? That might be fun.
There's a lot that I've mentioned before that I keep just like a billion tabs open of games that I need to buy as soon as I can.
Sure.
Several of them are Metroidvanias right now, so it's certainly not out of the question.
Now that thing, you've brought that up before about the tabs. Are they tabs to the store pages? Is that why they're...
Some of them are tabs to physical copies.
Okay.
Some of them are tabs to certain storefronts that have them on sale at the time I opened the tab.
Yeah, this is just fascinating behavior that I always need to, investigate when someone brings up that they have a million tabs open. And is it that having the tab open creates a greater sense of urgency for you, or a reminder?
Yes. So,
okay.
I don't have my smartphone, so to-do lists are either paper or they are things that bother me and are always in my eyesight.
So if you did a bookmark tab, you bookmark all these pages instead of having them open as tabs, your browser's cleaner, but they wouldn't be in your face all the time.
Out of sight, out of mind. I would totally forget about them.
That's why you do it.
100%.
Okay. That makes sense, and I think that's valid. It's just I've been curious about that since you brought it up. So anyway, I don't have any questions about Ghost Song. I think you've described it super well. That's it. That's all from me. But where can you play Ghost Song?
All right. You can play Ghost Song on Windows, Xbox One, Xbox Series X and S, Nintendo Switch, PlayStation 5, and I played the physical edition on PS4.
Wow, you can play it pretty much anywhere.
Just about.
It is time for my secret game. My secret game, as Disco hinted at earlier, has nothing to do with Blasphemous, really. Well, I guess in name and sort of some of its ideas. I guess it has something to do with Blasphemous.
I'm horrified already.
My secret game is a little bit more playful. It's called Demon Turf.
The demon world is inhabited by all kinds of nasties, separated into turfs and their gang leaders. None stand a chance to the Demon King himself. I say it's time to kick his sorry butt out of here!
Okay. Oh, actually, I think, yes, I know which one this is. I'm a little bit surprised it's not on our big list, to be honest. But
Oh, yeah. So I actually have looked into this game. It does not have many reviews out there.
Interesting.
Not a lot of people know about it. I think it's like really well talked about by platonic friends, who is associated with the ukulele people. But I just don't think a lot of people have played this in a way that I thought at first.
Interesting. So there's a physical edition dropped, I want to say like a year and a half ago, maybe 2 years at this point. And man, people were like stoked about it. They were like heckin' wild.
So yeah, this has been on my list for a while. I've had this game for a while, and the length of the game has always kind of been tricky for me to fit in. So I fit it in a time where I had enough lead time to get Demon Turf done. And I've sent you a trailer, which you can take a look at.
All right.
And also I'll add that trailer is like one of the best trailers for just showing off everything that's going on in a game that I've sent you, I think.
Oh, cool. Okay.
It's just comprehensive. I think it's really good trailer. This is a 2021 3D platformer developed by Fabraz and published by Platonic Friends. The game synopsis from the PlayStation storefront reads, quote, "The demon world is inhabited by all kinds of nasties, most of them lumped into gangs battling for dominion, each led by its own head honcho. Yet even these bad dudes are no match for the Demon King himself. Instead, the task falls to Beebs, a young demon barely 1,000 years old, who decides it's time for her to kick every turf leader's butt and become the Demon Queen herself," end quote.
Just casually one Saturday, I was like, you know what? I've had enough of those guys.
Honestly, that's kind of the vibe. You start this game and you're playing as Beebs, this humanoid demon girl who wants to take on the Demon King and become the queen of the demon world. And this is a 3D platformer with 2D sprites. So this look is where, you have 3 dimensions of movement. The whole world is like explorable, like something, like a 3D Mario game, for instance.
Right.
But your sprite is a 2D character.
You're flat. Yeah.
You're flat. You're like a piece of paper.
Yeah.
It's very interesting.
It's, that for a long time, that sort of art direction was really off-putting to me. But I think after I played Smile for Me, I kind of had a shift, and I'm kind of into it now.
Yes. And based on the little footage I've seen from Smile for Me, like the trailer and stuff, it's a lot like that. And like how you can think of it as far as like, how do we get the different animations and things? Well, in that 2D picture of a character, they can be expressive, they can move around. But then when you rotate the camera, they have 8 different directions they can face. So there's like 4 different backside angles, and then there's 4 different front side angles, I think.
Not a lot of games do that. They would just have your character model rotate. So they're putting a lot of work in on Demon Turf.
So a lot of characters have that sort of thing going on where they will dynamically change depending on like the angle of the camera too. So to understand what it looks like, it's best to just look at that trailer for Demon Turf. But yeah, Beebs just wants to become the queen of this sort of demonic world. And her best friends are Lucy and Midgie, who join you in conversation between a lot of the stages you're platforming in. And you have this hub and spoke system to the layout of levels. I had never heard this term before I looked at the wiki for this game, but it makes sense to me, where basically you have a hub called Forktown, and this is where you choose which world to go explore. You can go to shops here. You can talk to lots of NPCs. It's sort of the central area. And then the spokes are the worlds or turfs in this game. There are 4 turfs, and each turf has 8 levels where you platform and find collectibles. And you're ultimately trying to collect a battery at the end of each level. Once you find all the batteries in all the levels of a turf, you can take on that turf's boss. And then after you defeat that boss, you can go on to the next turf. So it's kind of like what we've played in other games. There's a hub. Connected to that hub are the 4 areas, and then those areas have levels. So it just kind of cascades down from that hub world.
Hyperlight Drifter's a little bit like that. They're dungeony, but
Yes.
so
Yeah, no, totally, because you have like the 4 cardinal directions to
but
go.
within each cardinal
but
direction are
within
like
each one-
3 dungeons that you collect that
Yes,
stuff.
it's a lot like that. And you have a pause screen that breaks all this down too, very easily. But in addition to all that, Disco, once a turf is conquered, you can revisit all the levels within that turf for like a remixed version that have more collectibles and another battery to collect.
Oh, wild.
But you only need, and so that's called the revisit or something like that. So you have the first visit of a level, you have the revisit of a level. You only need to do the first visit of a level to conquer all 4 turfs. But if you want 100% completion, you've got to do all the remixed levels. You got to get all the candy and cake and batteries and all these levels. Those are the collectibles going on. And you run into all kinds of platforms in this game. You have moving platforms. You've got projectiles and lasers and sticky surfaces and slippery surfaces. There's ice. There's gooey stuff. There are bouncing platforms. Switches and levers will unlock doors. So basically, if you think of a mechanic you've seen in a 3D platformer, it's probably in Demon Turf somewhere. This game is very long, as you could probably imagine, because you have all those remixed versions of stages. And the stages, spoiler alert, the stages are very big. This game is very long. That's why I had to wait for an opportune time to play this game. It takes a long time to finish this. And then when it comes to your moveset, Beebs can jump in many different ways. You can do wall jumps. You can do triple jumps. You can do this thing called the super jump, which is sort of the bread and butter of movement in Demon Turf. This is where you jump. You use a spin move that you have, and then jumping out of that spin move gives you an extra length jump. So you're doing a jump, spin, jump a lot in this game to cover lots of distance. And so I was doing that every level. So that spin is something you can do in the air, but you can also do it on the ground. And when you meet enemies in this game, you can spin into them to knock them away. But you can also do a move called a punch, which is where it's actually not physical. You can kind of like shoot a projectile, like a big fist at enemies, like a big hand. And you can move around while you're charging up the fist too. So lots of ways to interact with enemies. But when you encounter enemies, you don't deal direct damage to them. You have to spin or punch them into spikes or off ledges. So it's always sort of indirect as far as the damage you're dealing in this game.
Interesting.
You can also swim. There are levels with water. You unlock moves at the end of turfs called turf moves, and this is where we're getting big, like new ways to play the game. You've got a hook shot. You've got a rollout where you like turn into a big snake and you roll like a giant wheel.
See that?
You see that in the trailer. There's a glide in this game where you turn into like a bird. So lots of different ways to move around in this game. And here's another huge part of the identity of the gameplay. You can place down your own checkpoint flags in Demon Turf.
Oh.
So when you start a level, there's a checkpoint flag at the start. If you were to die, you would go back to that checkpoint flag. But you're given 3 more checkpoint flags that you can use at your own discretion. So if you're on a safe, flat platform anywhere in the level, high or low, far from the start of the stage, close to the start of the stage, you can put down another checkpoint flag, and that will be the new place you spawn from. So you get to choose where your checkpoints are, which is really interesting. So
that's a lot of responsibility.
It is. But I haven't quite seen that in another 3D platformer that I can remember. But yeah, you collect candy and cake, and you use those to buy new hair and outfit colors and mods that add passive effects like increased speed or falling more slowly. You have tons of quests and collectibles and challenges in this game. You have a camera and you can take photos of things. There are 50 photo hunts where you're told to go take a picture of something specific. You have 25 arena challenges. You've got 10 demon soccer golf courses. You've got 30 platforming trials and 8 arcade challenges. All that stuff is optional. Doing it will give you like more more candy that you can use in shops. So a lot going on in Demon Turf. Here's what I liked. Foremost, I think I really like the personality of this game. And the personality comes out in a number of ways. There's the character design of Beebs and her friends and other demons. The idle animations they have are very expressive. If Beebs just stands still, she'll sit down and she'll start like texting on her phone, and she'll start to like taking selfies of herself and she makes like a demon smile while she's taking a selfie. So like, I love that. The voice acting is really good in this game. You don't always get voice acting. You can talk to almost any NPC in this game, but you'll get that voice acting between Beebs and Lucy and Midgie. I really like how they sound. And then you also talk to the bosses of all the turfs, and they're really fun. I love the variety of level aesthetics and ideas. In the first level of this game, like the first series of levels in the first like turf, it can kind of seem like they're all sort of a hellscape looking environment. And you might think, oh, is this like what the whole game looks like? But you soon run into beach levels that are like bright and sunny. You run into like pirate themed levels. There are like levels that are all green and it looks like it's a toxic wasteland. There are cityscape levels and snowy areas and underwater areas where you swim a lot. So the game explores lots of different areas, and all those abilities like the rollout where you roll really fast to cover long distances. That feels really nice to control. And I also really like soaring, doing that glide that we eventually get in this game. The soundtrack is full of bops. The music is very upbeat and it kind of sounds spunky, to match the personality of Beebs. So I feel like a lot of her personality is coming out in this sound that's around her. And then something I don't get to applaud often enough, the lighting in this game is really cool.
Oh yeah, I'm picking up on that.
There's a lot of contrast added through light, especially when you're outdoors, like in a sunny level. You'll get really nice shadow effects, really nice bright effects on things that the sun's hitting, for instance. Outdoor lighting is beautiful in this game. There's a great mixture of bright and dark areas. You'll go from a bright area to like a dark cavern or tunnel. And just seeing that variety in one level is really cool. So that's what I applaud about Demon Turf. And coming up to what I complain the most about this game is that this game, I've said it a couple times, this game is big. I think this game is too big. I think this game is too big and too long. Disco, I was playing this game past midnight last night, trying to finish it for the review today. And I got to tell you, I still have not faced the final boss, actually.
Oh, dang.
Because there are the 4 turfs, each with a boss at the end of them. And I thought the 4 turfs were it, that I could just keep going from turf to turf, finish each one, beat the boss, move on to the next one, do all 4, and I'm done, right? But I got to the end of the 4th turf and I discovered that I need to do those second visits of nearly all the levels again.
Oh no.
Just to face the final boss. So what I thought was optional to like get full finishing status was not enough. So there are 28 batteries you can get on your first pass through the game. Then there's another 28 and you need 50 total.
Damn
so after about 12 hours with this game total, and I played like 6 hours yesterday, I finally beat the 4th turf, but I only had 38% overall completion. And that completion is all the side stuff. It's all the collectibles. It's all the batteries. It's everything in the game.
Everything, yeah.
So I have less than 40% overall completion in this game. I just think it's unfortunate that the final boss is still locked behind so much work. I have to go back to all these stages. I only ended up with 31 out of the 50 batteries. So I still have a ways to go. I think the levels in Demon Turf 2 can be just too sprawling. I think these levels are massive.
Yeah.
In a way that makes me feel like progress isn't satisfyingly constant. I can spend sometimes 25 or 30 minutes on one level, and there are, dozens of levels.
I've played a game like that very, very recently.
Okay.
Yeah, so I know what you're talking about.
Say no more. Yeah. And also I just don't know that even though this game does explore lots of different kinds of platforms and jumping and abilities, I don't know that enough ideas are spread among that massive size. The jumping can also feel a tad weak, while movement can sometimes feel slippery when you land on platforms. Sometimes platforms are placed just barely within reach too, so you don't have as much wiggle room for some jumps. And I was redoing the same areas over and over with my limited checkpoint flags. I was trying to ration them. And so sometimes I would have to redo a checkpoint quite a ways back because I didn't want to waste my last checkpoint flag really close to a ledge if I have the sense that the rest of the level is still pretty long. And that's where I get to my complaint about the checkpoint flags too. I think this is an interesting idea where I can choose to put down my own checkpoint flags. But in practice, I forget to do it, or I don't know how long the levels are on my first playthrough, so I don't know how to ration the checkpoint flags. I don't want to burn them all because once you place them all down, you can't redo them. So it's this thing that distracts me from just enjoying the levels. I wish I could just be given those checkpoints automatically. I do think the checkpoint flags are sort of accidentally most useful as a means of backtracking from a high place. So if I climb a tower that takes me like 10 minutes to climb, I can put a checkpoint flag up there. And then I didn't mention this, there's a feature where you can click on your stick and an arrow will point to the nearest collectible in the level that you've missed.
Oh, well, that's not bad.
It is really nice. So it's great for cleaning up things. But if I climb to the top of a tower and I click my stick and that arrow is pointing downward somewhere, I know I can put down that checkpoint flag up there. I can soar down and try to find where this collectible is. Maybe I find it. And then I can actually warp back to the checkpoint flag. I can sort of kill myself. And I will reset.
Yeah.
So that's nice.
There's a little bit of that going on in Ghost Song too. I didn't mention it, but
cool.
But like menu screen quitting is a nice way to backtrack.
Yeah, and here like I can either just jump off a ledge or I can just manually hold a button and after a few seconds I will warp. So I like that. It's just that I think the main intended use doesn't end up being something that I remember to do or that I feel comfortable doing, which is deciding where my own checkpoints should be as I'm making progress. That's hard to do when I've never played this game before. So overall, I think Demon Turf could be a lot shorter. Less is sometimes more. And here, I would prefer a tighter package. If this game was half the length, I think the enjoyment I have with it wouldn't be spread as thin. It has a 2D look in a 3D space that's very eye-catching. I love the personality touches, but this game doesn't always feel very focused with what it's trying to do. I think 3D platforming fans should consider checking this out. But finishing it, for me, sort of feels like I'm eating an elephant a bit. And I didn't always feel like doing that. So the score I'm going to arrive on this is a 5.5 out of 10.
Wow. That's way lower than I thought it was going to be.
Like, I do have fun when I play it, but I can't play it for very long stretches. But I do need to play it for very long stretches to finish the game somewhat for this review. And so I'd spent a long time, spent 12 hours in this game, and I still have not seen that final boss. It's playable on PC, Mac, Switch, PS4, PS5, which is the version I played, Xbox One, and Xbox Series X and S.
Yes, and if you are a fan of physical copies, limited run games did a physical for this. I don't remember which platforms, but I'm pretty sure it's PS4 and PS5 at least. I do have a question for you as far as like death and checkpoints. How far away from Celeste on the scale are we in terms of like respawn getting back into the action?
There's a quick like animation that flashes on screen and then it wipes away. It's a wipe transition.
Yep.
You know how Celeste, it's almost like a blink in your back. This is a sustained blink. You know, it's like a little bit longer.
Okay.
So it doesn't throw me back in as immediately as it could, but it's pretty fast.
Okay. And then I was just going to comment on like, I was kind of in the same boat as you as far as like trying to get stuff done for today. Like I was up until 3:30 last night with Ghost Song.
Oh my God.
And I was still not done.
Oh my God.
Luckily, my kids were being really independent this morning, so I did get some time.
You got some more time.
I got some more time and I finished it.
You did. Good.
But like
Congratulations.
I went straight from bed to the game to notes. So like I finished Ghost Song about 7 hours ago, and I finished my notes like 5 minutes before I went out the door.
That's not that much later than me.
Yeah, it's been a rough week, I guess, for both of us.
Yeah, I guess we both just expected to get done sooner. But yeah, this game kept surprising me with how much bigger it was than I thought.
Yeah.
But if you're having a good time with 3D platformers, you know, if you like 3D platformers, if that's your thing, check out Demon Turf. It's got a lot for you.
Yeah, the movement's kind of reminding me of another game I have on my potential future list called Pseudo Regalia. And there's like
I know that game.
There's like
I know that
a
game.
kind of a cult following for it. It's small, but they're people that like it really like it.
So that game has been on my secret games list, but I would totally like not play it to allow you to play it someday. I would love.
I'm not so great at 3D platformers, so if you get the right episode for it, no hard feelings
No
if
hard
you
feelings.
take it.
Okay.
Yeah.
It's been on my radar for a while.
But it's someday I might play it too. So
Okay. Sounds good.
Yeah. It's a race.
Yeah. But yeah, no hard feelings either way.
Yeah.
And then Steam has this game as the Queen's Edition. And so this includes the original game Demon Turf, and then a smaller game called Demon Turf Neon Splash, and as well as Demon Turf Tower, I believe are what they're called. And so this is like a collection package. And that's why I read the synopsis from the PlayStation storefront this time.
Oh,
because
I get it.
the PlayStation storefront doesn't have the Queen's Edition.
It doesn't have all the extra.
It doesn't have all
content.
the extra stuff all lumped
The
in.
neon content.
Sometimes games come out on Steam, and then later the default version becomes that expanded version, and you don't really get the essence of what the game was when it first came out.
Yeah.
But Demon Turf Neon Splash and Demon Turf Tower are additional experiences you can play in this world. So yeah, those are our secret games, Ghost Song and Demon Turf. Let's move on to our review of Blasphemous. It is our featured game. Blasphemous is a Metroidvania first released in 2019. It was developed by the Game Kitchen and published by Team 17. The game synopsis from the Steam storefront reads, quote, Blasphemous is a brutal action platformer with skilled hack-and-slash combat set in the nightmare world of Cvstodia. Is it called Cvstodia?
Is that a V?
Yeah.
That will always be my favorite soundbite of Underplayed until something better comes along.
You really I like that too. I was like, is that a B? I didn't know, but it is Cvstodia, right?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right, let me restart this. Blasphemous is a brutal action platformer with skilled hack-and-slash combat set in the nightmare world of Cvstodia. Explore, upgrade your abilities, and perform savage executions on the hordes of enemies that stand between you and your quest to break eternal damnation. End quote. I think it's maybe worth saying up top that this game is violent. This game is for mature audiences. Would you add anything to that?
Yeah.
As far as a warning?
Yeah, it is violent. If violence is okay in your household, there is also nudity in this game. So be aware of that. And just some things are really disturbing, if not outright violent. Mm-hmm. There's a lot of like depictions of torture too. So
a lot of depravity.
A lot of things.
Mm-hmm.
A lot of things.
This game's heavy.
I'm not gonna ever play this in front of my children. No. So
yeah, I hear you.
Keep that in mind.
I wouldn't play this in front of some adults, like many adults. So just wanted to get that out there. So we'll set up the story of this game and then the gameplay. In this game, it is a 2D Metroidvania with pixel-style graphics. It takes place in the land of Cvstodia, and this land is influenced by Spanish Holy Week and a lot of Catholic imagery. This land is cursed by something called the Grievous Miracle, which both blesses and curses the inhabitants of Cvstodia. And this idea of like blessing and cursing was something that was a little mysterious to me. Like, what does that mean? Like, there's equal parts people having like miraculous things happen to them, and then equal parts people suffering. And I get more of the suffering.
Yeah.
I think it's mostly
maybe it's some people have and most people have not. The haves and the have-nots. You know? Maybe that's what it means.
Yeah. So it is a curse at the end of the day, and you play as the Penitent One, a warrior from the Brotherhood of Silent Sorrow. And I think the Penitent One is the last of their kind or from this brotherhood. And you've got a signature pointy hat with a very defined face on it. And he wields the Mea Culpa sword, which originated from a woman who sought pain for her guilt. And we see her in an opening cutscene sort of hurting herself. And this game opens very violently. The Penitent One is making a pilgrimage through Cvstodia. His goal is to reach this thing called the Cradle of Affliction and to be judged. This is kind of like the Holy Grail of this world. You're trying to find the Holy Grail, but you're in the end, you're being judged for your actions. And along the way, we meet lots of NPCs with tasks for the Penitent One, people who need saving or help finding things. There's an NPC called Diogracias, who guides the Penitent One and narrates the game. That's someone I would highlight as a recurring figure. But there are other people associated with a church that you run into, side characters in different sub areas of the game that need your assistance with different activities. So that's what I would say to set up the game. Would you like? Would you like to talk about the gameplay?
Yeah. So it's your classic Metroidvania. You've got your map and all your interconnected areas. However, instead of leaning on the projectile-focused Metroid side of things, this is mostly close combat, melee combat kind of a thing. So a lot of it revolves around your aforementioned pointy sword, the Mea Culpa. You can also gather prayers, which sort of act like spells or projectiles or other effects that take up a meter that depletes. You've got mobility upgrades and your classic, stuff that you start with. You start with like a ground slide and a singular jump, but you gain access to many more things. For an example, you can do sort of like a downward stab. You can charge your sword later on. You gain the ability to climb these strange vines that grow out of the wall.
We'll talk about those later.
Yeah. So you gain access to a lot more mobility upgrades. Yeah, and then the gameplay is just defeat enemies. There's loads of enemies that will respawn after you reach your save points. And your save points act as respawn points. And anytime you activate one of those, all of the enemies you've defeated come back. So if you've played Hollow Knight, think of sitting at a bench in Hollow Knight.
Mm-hmm.
All the monsters return. And you make your way to different bosses, and you uncover hidden rooms behind breakable walls. You upgrade your health. You upgrade your spell casting ability. Gosh.
You have like rosary beads and rosary bead slots. Rosary
Yes.
beads are just another kind of passive
These are
effect
your
you can...
charms
Exactly.
from Hollow Knight.
Yes.
And then you also have these, they're sort of like the fleeces from Cult of the Lamb, where each one will give you a benefit, but also sort of like
the sword hearts.
Yeah, the
right?
sword hearts.
Yeah, you can only equip one at a time.
Yep, and you'll have either a benefit, but there's like a drawback to most of them.
Yes.
Or like they only activate in certain circumstances. And then there's various other upgrades that just make traveling a lot easier. And we'll talk about one in particular later.
Oh, yes, we will. Yes. There's a flask count that we heal from. We can upgrade those flasks.
Yeah, think energy tanks from Metroid.
Mm-hmm.
Yep.
There are lots of miscellaneous challenges and collectibles. There are bones. There's like all kinds of bones we can find.
Yeah,
of
tons of collectibles. Absolutely worth calling out here.
These babies called cherubs.
Cherubs, yes.
Just flying around in cages. There's like arena challenges.
Oh yeah, I didn't actually get to do any of those, so
Okay.
I don't remember those. Yeah. But there's arena challenges, and you'll have to talk about what those actually are.
Yeah, basically, they're just rooms where you get waves of enemies thrown at you. If you defeat all the arena challenges, you get a different ending and you get like different rewards by doing more of these arena challenges. That's really it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So you can unlock a bunch of these different rooms that have things like the guilt remover, which is like recovering your soul in Hollow Knight. You can increase your rosary beads, increase your health, increase your magic, like we talked about. There's teleporters, which help a lot.
Yeah.
And I don't think we're in the base game, actually, when it first came
Oh,
out.
are
I
you?
think that's an addition.
Really?
Yeah.
It is worth mentioning this game has DLC.
Yes.
And I had a tough time figuring out where the base game stopped and where the DLC started.
I'm still not 100%. I assume if there's like a significant task that I do and I'm not getting a trophy for it, that's probably DLC.
I think you're right. But there are entire areas
Yeah.
that are more advanced that are part of the DLC as well.
Yeah, we'll
And
talk
so-
about that as well.
Ed, we're coming at this game, years after it released. All this stuff is sort of lumped into the game Blasphemous that you buy. It's got all the DLC. So it's not like DLC you buy separately. It's
Yeah.
just all together.
Yeah, free updates and all that kind of thing.
Like what they did with Hollow Knight.
Yeah.
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 They added all that stuff in as they went.
Let's see. Other things, you reach Mea Culpa upgrades, which will increase your just default damage output on your sword swing.
Yeah.
And that's most everything, I think.
Yeah, I think so. There's probably other miscellaneous things, but it is hard to summarize everything. I think you did a great job. DiscoCola, you had previously taken a crack at playing Blasphemous, not for our show, just personally, just in your free time.
Yeah.
Years ago. What was that like?
Yeah. So back in 2020, the physical edition was released, and that's, I had seen ads for Blasphemous before it came out, and I was like, oh, look at that. And I was like, ready for it. I was really into
The
it.
face you made just now. I love that.
But yeah, I was really excited to try it. And the physical release actually arrived pretty quick. So I first tried it back in 2020. I only did one play session with it. And it's really funny. I took a screenshot of this. My first play session back in 2020 almost matches exactly my first play session in 2024. I was like almost exactly as far with almost the exact same time on the clock.
So what you're saying is playing a game 4 years ago does not give you an advantage 4 years later.
I remembered how to slide.
Okay.
That's about it.
That's fair.
And I also remembered that I stopped way back when because it was really hard. And I was like, I'm not ready for this right now.
Mhm.
It also would have been around the time my first kid was born.
There you
So
go.
that might have something to do with it.
That makes sense.
Yeah.
We had also previously nearly picked this game a few seasons ago, but I think we went with Abzu instead. I
Yeah.
think that's the switch we made. Just a hard turn in the other direction.
I don't think there is.
One is a difficult, arduous, painful, and violent game about death, and the other is Blasphemous.
I don't think there is any clean water in the entirety of Blasphemous anywhere.
And then Abzu, you've got this beautiful ocean. So really it was a poetic switch in the end. How much were you able to do in Blasphemous recently now that you've played the whole game?
Yeah, this time around. So I have, I think, 98% of the map uncovered.
Nice.
Rolled credits. I have all of the cherubs, but that's about it. The last play session I had, I was trying to go through something in morning. What's it called? The pirate ship area.
The place at the bottom. Yeah.
Yeah.
I know what you're talking about.
I was trying to defeat the boss that's hidden in there.
Oh, the big snake?
The big snake. That
Yes.
was the last thing I tried. I was not successful.
Okay.
I had to move on to Ghost Song, but that's about it. Like, I collected all the cherubs, and I was working on getting all of the rosary knots when
Yes.
I encountered the snake. So
Okay.
that's what I'm working on right now, is getting rosary knots.
Gotcha. Okay, cool. Cool. I was able to 100% my save file. A lot of this was just exploring the map. You need to get 100% on your map to get 100% on your save file. I didn't originally know that,
Mm-hmm.
but I did a lot of miscellaneous tasks. If you look at the trophy list for this game, it will clue you into what you need to do. Basically, all of the favors you do for people are trophies, and they're part of the 100%, as well as collecting everything, getting all the upgrades. It takes quite a while. I played about 30 hours of this game. There was a lot to do. I think I have just 3 trophies left in the trophy list. I have to do the speedrun trophy, the no bile flasks during boss fights trophy, and I have to do the Crossing Souls trophy, which is where you do the other side of an option that I did in my first playthrough. So it's like one you have to back up your save and download it if you want to efficiently get both, or you have to do a new playthrough. So DiscoCola, after finishing Blasphemous, you gave it a crack a few years ago, put it down pretty quickly. You've now finished Blasphemous. It caught your eye years ago. You're done now. What do you think about this game?
Well, I'm not done. I do plan to go back.
You rolled credits.
I rolled credits. My overall thoughts on Blasphemous is that this game is a bleak, grotesque assault for the eyes that I just can't stop playing.
Hell yes.
I like a lot about this game. I think the movement pretty much always feels good. I think the jump height is just right. I think the slide feels really good. I think swinging your sword feels great. And the reach, I could go for a little bit more reach, but
just a little bit. I want the longer nail upgrade. From all that.
It's pretty stinking good. And then monster designs. I like the monster designs. They are this like insane Dante-esque Ars, Goshen abominations. I simultaneously like love it and hate it. I don't know if you've ever like after we went and saw Hereditary. I don't know if you like fell down the Pyman, rabbit hole.
Oh, I did. Yeah, I Googled a lot after that movie. Yes.
So you've seen some of the like illustrations of all the different demons and stuff.
Yes, I remember doing that after Midsommar as well.
So there's a lot of that stuff going on in here, and I love it, but I've really been into those like demon designs, but it's just
amazing.
It's grotesque, my friend.
Yes.
I also love that I often know where to go, and if I don't, I usually find that I'm accidentally on my way there anyway. I'm always on my way to something. There's rarely a dead end that doesn't reward you with at least a jawbone or something.
Mm-hmm.
There's almost always something for your work. So that's really, really satisfying. I don't feel like I'm wasting my time like I would in some other Metroidvanias that I've played recently. Speaking of, I think the secrets are fun and satisfying to find, and they rarely feel like a waste of time. I think the ones that I'm always least excited to find are the bones, but it's still fun to get to a new room and just like see that little black circle up in the corner. I'm like, how do I get there? And it's just sort of like a fun Easter egg hunt just inside the little room. I think that the map in Blasphemous is exquisite, and I think the marker system is actually really useful. I always know what's unexplored. I talked about this in Ghost Song. I didn't talk about that Ghost Song has a marker system, but their markers are nonsensical. Like, no one marker seems to mean anything to me. So it's hard to know which one to use for what I want to go back to. Here, it's pretty straightforward. Like, there are some that you could assign meaning to.
Yeah, like a green circle or a blue square. Like, what does that mean to you?
Yeah, but you also have like skeletons. It's like a skull. Like, that could be a bone, or it could be, this is a room that kills me just by standing in it. So that you could mark it.
Or this is a boss that I tried and I couldn't beat it.
Yeah.
Like, that's what I use skulls for in Breath of the Wild and Tears of the Kingdom on my map. Like, if I run into a boss in Zelda Tears of the Kingdom and I can't beat it, I put a skull on the map.
Yeah.
So like, go back there when you're better.
And there's like a baby one that I saw you use to mark.
I was putting hella babies on my map.
Babies.
Lots of babies I couldn't get to.
Pin that comment. Hella babies on the map. But like, in addition to that, you always know where you haven't explored, and you always know where there's a door that you need to go back to and figure out how to get there. I think this game has really great set pieces. Like, you've got the big vertical snowy mountaintop. You've got Hondo, the upside down bell. What a weird and wild thing.
Insane.
Yeah. Why is there a giant bell inside the planet? But then you look at the map too, and it's shaped like a bell. Like, yeah, you have hard edges because the map is made of squares,
Sure. Yeah.
but it's bell-shaped.
Yeah. And then you've got another bigger bell in like the church area up to the northeast.
Yes, exactly. That swinging thing that's falling all over the place, that's super cool. I love the set pieces in this game. And like the library is awesome.
Mm-hmm.
And like even that place that I hate, morning something, whatever, the pirate ship place.
Yeah.
Cool set pieces in there. Hate being there. Loathe every second of it.
Yeah.
But it looks cool.
Morning and Havoc.
Morning and Havoc.
Yes.
Aptly named. Just absolute unfun place to be.
They knew what they were doing with that name.
There's a lot of really cool items, a lot of really cool mobility upgrades. I talked about the climbing the vines, jumping on the mystery platforms that aren't always there unless you equip the item.
Mm-hmm.
But my absolute favorite item in the entire game is this item that lets you fall into pits without dying. Not only do you not die in pits, which is what kills me more than anything else, but it's a great way to cut down on backtracking. You fall through the next lowest place.
Mm-hmm.
Awesome idea. Never seen it done in another game like that.
Completely unexpected. This item is called the Linen of Golden Thread, by the way. And it completely changes how you look at the map of this game.
Absolutely.
This is the like classic Castlevania games do this a lot where you get through what you think is the entire game and then the whole castle is mirrored. And now you go through the castle again. You're only halfway done with this damn game. And you're excited because you're having a great time. This isn't like doubling the size of the game, but it's making you look at this whole place in a new way. This linen of golden thread. So yeah, hearing you sound so excited about this when we were like watching each other's streams, that was really cool because you found it before me and you like hinted at it. There's something that you're going to be like, that I really love that I can't wait for you to find.
Yeah.
And I had the same reaction.
Yeah. I love that item. I love a lot of items, but I love that one the most. I also, there's a couple of like rosary beads that evolve and change. And I think that's so cool. You get a little bit of that in Hollow Knight with the fragile items, but you get it here too. Your beads of wax, which I never used anyway.
But it's cool.
They change, and you've got another
you've got
bead.
the immaculate bead or whatever. Yeah.
That changes.
And that has to do with the arena challenges.
Yes. I never would have figured that out without a guide. But
yeah, you have to interact with that stuff to see everything the game has to offer.
Yeah. And I think that's so fun. It gives me just a little bit of like extra credit, extra homework, but it's like fun homework. You get extra points for doing more stuff. There's cool puzzles in the game. Metroidvanias don't have to have puzzles, but you go into a room and you see like pictures on a wall, and maybe you talk to a dead body before that. You talk to dead bodies in this game, by the way.
Yeah. You get a relic that you can equip that lets you see the world differently, and now all these corpses have little symbols above them that tell you, oh, you can hear the thoughts of them.
Yes.
And then they sometimes give you hints to the environment.
They give you hints to secrets and secret walls and stuff. They'll give you hints about some of these puzzles, and then you'll put what the corpse told you together with the pictures on the wall, and you figure it out. And you're like, oh, and then you feel so smart for doing that. And then you finish the puzzle, and a secret door unlocks, and you can't break that secret door with your sword.
Blasphemous is a puzzle game, actually.
And it's so cool. But mostly the game is it's good. When I'm done playing, I just want to get back in there and find everything in this world. It has just the right obstacles in all the right places with just the right amount of collectibles for the size of the world. I always can't wait to get back in, usually. I do have dislikes. It's the game's thing, but I think it has too much gore. It's just all the time. It's constant.
It's gratuitous.
It's so much. Like, keep all the execution animations, keep them just absolutely abhorrent and repulsive as they are, but maybe remove, a little bit of the people burning at the stake in the background. There's so much of that. It's a lot. I think it's just too much. I know it's its identity, but I I don't think I lose anything by having just a little bit less.
This
of
is an
that.
absolutely dreadful place to be.
Yeah.
Not in that I get tired of the place and that, I don't want to play anymore because I'm feeling so disgusted. I don't get to that point.
Yeah.
But this is a place that is a hellscape.
Yes. Like I turn it on. I know what I signed up for. I know that there's going to be disgusting stuff, and I'm not being like thrown off. I just don't think it loses anything by having just a little bit less. That's all. That's how I would put
That's
it.
fair.
One of the first things I noticed when I played back in 2020 is that I don't think some of the really large sprites are always really well done, and the pixel shading technique that's used in this game doesn't really quite match the same standard at that larger scale when compared to smaller sprites.
Okay.
So I'm thinking of like the charred visage sprite. I didn't think that looked very good compared to the rest of the game.
So when it's like focused in on a smaller sort of canvas, like that style, when you expand it, it doesn't really translate as well, like
Right.
to the larger
Exactly.
creatures.
That's a good way to put
Interesting.
it.
Yeah. Well, you just put it in a way that I hadn't thought of before. I don't know that I agree necessarily, but I do understand what you mean.
Yeah. I don't want to say that the shading technique that the pixel artist used is bad in this game because it works for most of the things in the game. I just didn't think that the charred visage, like, it just didn't look good to me.
Okay. That you have an eye for that stuff that I don't. So,
one of the biggest things that I disliked this time is that dialogue is just sort of impossible for me to follow. It's like too much. It's too poetic, or poetic's maybe not even the right word, but I have to try really hard to read it in the first place. And then I am also basically translating everything to English after that, even though it's already English.
It's not quite on the level of Shakespeare, but
Right.
it's slightly Shakespearean
Yeah.
in that when I read it, I feel dumb.
Yeah. Yeah. I just don't like dialogue. It's the same thing that I don't like about medieval high fantasy dialogue. It's just a bunch of flowery ways to say things and then names
Sure.
that don't sound like names.
Sure.
I think certain enemy types hit way too hard for how often you have to go through them, traveling back and forth. Small complaint, but I'm thinking of that thing that looks like Paimon, the like crawling thing that spits the fireballs.
Oh, yes.
That takes so long to defeat one of those,
Yes.
and it just, you plateau. There's like a certain point where it just doesn't get easier to beat those things, and it just takes a long time. I don't really like navigating my equipment, honestly. It's a lot like the River City Girls menu. There's just a few too many things to scroll through, I think.
You're talking about rosary beads,
prayers, mea culpa status, bones collected, key items.
It's a lot of sub-menus.
Did
you find yourself equipping what you would call like a loadout with rosary beads that you thought would be helpful for a boss that you've tried a couple times or something, and then you find that you need to unequip some of that stuff and find a new build a little bit later, and were you kind of messing with the menus a lot to try to figure out how to unequip and equip stuff?
Well, honestly, because I don't like going through the menu so much, I sort of found a loadout that was a little bit more universal, and I tried to stick with it as much as I could. There are harder bosses that I was like, okay, God, I have to switch some stuff up here, or like certain puzzles that you have to do that require you to change to stuff that I wouldn't otherwise equip.
Okay.
I've mentioned this a lot already, but I hate Mourning and Havoc.
It's just, again,
I hate it.
Yeah.
It's bad. Well, it's not bad, but it's ruthless, and I hate being there.
Yeah, it is disproportionately unfair
I
compared
agree.
to every other area.
That's a great way to say it.
Mm-hmm.
And one other thing that I really don't like is that certain tasks lock you out of completing other tasks. And this makes my like perfect save file brain go crazy, because in some cases, one outcome isn't necessarily better than the other.
Mm-hmm.
It's just, you have to pick one.
That means you have to get two 100% save files.
Yeah.
for your brain.
Apparently, yeah. And then on top of that, this game is quite large. So you have to like do the whole game again for the stuff that you missed or chose to not do the first time.
Yes.
And I think it's because it's so large, that's a bit of an unfair time commitment to ask of me, even as enjoyable as the game is. So I could go for a slightly shorter game. I guess this is its own like sub-complaint. Getting into the big gate feels like a halfway point rather than like a 4/5.
Do you mean crossing the bridge?
Crossing the bridge,
Yes.
yeah.
Yeah.
That's more like a halfway point as opposed to what I expected it to be, which was I expected it to be sort of like a 4/5 way point, you know?
Oh.
Like, I thought that would make this game feel less daunting. Like, my first overarching task at the beginning kind of fell a bit flat for me because it actually ends at the halfway point of the game instead of, like, close to the end.
My sense, maybe it's because of the way I explored this game and how I went to Havoc and what's it called?
Morning and Havoc.
Morning and Havoc. I went to Morning and Havoc like way earlier than I should have, and I did a lot of side stuff pretty early on. That bridge part felt like the maybe third way mark for me. But I guess maybe in hindsight, with the number of bosses you beat, maybe it is the halfway point.
It's because you beat the 3 main bosses, and then you beat 3 more required bosses.
Yeah.
So it feels like a halfway point, even though I think you do explore more map at the beginning. Anyways, it's much more satisfying for me when that like overarching task brings you a little bit closer to the end, a little bit closer to the finish line.
Sure.
Because it feels like that first task wasn't actually that big of a deal.
Maybe it's like the inverse of what I thought about Titan Souls. I don't know. I might have to reflect on that. But
interesting.
Yeah, I get what you mean.
Yeah. So overall, I know that there's things I missed to mention in my like section because I love this game. Blasphemous is a game that's really hard to put down. I always want to go just a little bit further or try something different at that obstacle that I just passed or see what's behind the door in this area or on the other side of the map. However, it can be a lot to look at, and I definitely cannot pick this game up whenever I want. It's something I definitely can't play in front of my family at all. Like, my wife actually saw me playing it. She was like, I don't think you guys should be playing that. Yeah. She was like, I'm serious.
It's upsetting.
Yeah.
Wow. I want to ask more. I want to know more about that, if there's anything more to say, but keep going.
I don't know, but, and yeah.
We'll have her on the next episode and interview her about Blasphemous. It'll be a bonus episode.
But yeah. And I think the game could have accomplished much of the same without going on that front so hard. All the same, though, the game kitchen cooked, and it is good. They made a game that feels good to play.
Compliments to the chef.
Yes, chef. They made a game that feels good to play at almost all times, with fun secrets and an epic world, like epic capital E. After my first play session in 2020, I was worried I couldn't beat it. I thought this game might be too hard for me. But at the end, in reality, it is just the right amount of difficulty for me to call it hard.
Yeah,
so for me, I give this a 9.5 out of 10.
Amazing. I'm so glad you loved it. I kind of knew you would. I think you were just destined to love this game. My thoughts are going to have a lot of echoes of what you said, honestly. I was intimidated by Blasphemous. I expected to like it a decent amount at best, but after playing this game, it's now one of my favorite Metroidvanias ever. I devoured this game. I played for a cumulative 12 hours on one Saturday. That Saturday where I finished the game.
Yeah.
I played more that night.
I saw.
I played this game so dang much that day. I put in 30 plus hours overall, total. Where do I even begin with my likes? The lore is palpable. You know, like, you've got people called Our Lady of the Charred Visage and Warden of the Silent Sorrow. Like, I've said this before as a descriptor for like Momodora bosses, but those are Bloodborne names, and I love Bloodborne. You know, just like the thickness of that nomenclature. The bones that you mentioned, they have such tragic stories written in so few words. I love getting those little pinches of storytelling sprinkled throughout. Every single item has descriptive text. There's even more lore you can read up on. So like, you're reading about some guy who was tortured and killed, and then there's a lore button, and then you can learn more about what this means. I didn't do that often, but I appreciate that it's there. The moving and the fighting with the mea culpa immediately feels amazing. Difficulty can be on the hard side, but the game is much more possible to beat than I expected, especially the further you get. This game makes you feel more powerful even after just a few health upgrades and fervor upgrades and mea culpa shrines. You start to get to that point where your fear of surmounting the game decreases as your excitement increases as you go along.
Yes.
Like, I can do this. You feel like I can do this the more you go. And I just want to keep devouring this game. That's what happened to me. Every major upgrade feels exciting. You mentioned the blood perpetuated in sand. This is creating those new platforms that show up. When I learned about that, it made me want to go back and re-explore every area.
The whole map.
Did they give you the little sprinkly red dots? It's like, were those around before? Dang, and they were. And I go back and I find new areas and I go, that's how I get up to that place. Of course, that's a hallmark of Metroidvanias, but it's just done so well here. I also love the linen of golden thread. Falling into any pit and discovering a new entrance to another part of the map. Instantly exciting, instantly surprising, instantly mind-altering and mind-opening is unlike anything I've seen in another game. I love the linen of golden thread. Many dozens of options are here for your loadouts, your rosary beads, your prayers. And I had lots of indecision about which beads to equip because so many of them were enticing to me. And spoiler alert for the dislikes section, but I didn't enjoy switching my loadouts in this game. I found it to be a lot of button pressing and trial and error, but I did switch my loadouts quite a lot through the game. And that's a sign that there are no right answers with how to build your character and how to play this game. And I think almost every rosary bead you could argue that it has a place in this game to use. There's so much visual and auditory flair. The death animations are gnarly. The music is masterful at underscoring the epicness.
Oh my God, how did I not talk about the music?
Yeah, did you want to just comment on the music real quick?
Oh, I love the music in Blasphemous so much. Oh, I'm so sorry, I forgot.
Well, that goes to show that there's so much to comment on in this game.
Carlos Viola. Oh man, this has been, even without beating the game, like some of these songs have been some of my favorite songs in games for a long time. It just sounds so beautiful. Great Spanish guitar and so many beautiful tracks. I can't believe I forgot to mention it.
It's haunting and brooding in some places. It's beautiful and understated in others. Just really well done. A lot of it is not radio listening for me, but when I'm playing this game, it's the perfect soundscape. The voiceover work is astounding. Nacimiento, the bile flask upgrader, he's the guy with the face on his chest.
Yep.
It's such a pained performance. Like, he is struggling to get the words out because he is the victim.
Pain. Yeah.
He's in pain. He's the victim of this horrible curse that evolves in grotesque ways as you go along. I loved seeing that. There are reactions I have to that in my streams where I'm just like, my jaw hits the floor. The map is easy to use and interpret. I appreciate the naming of each location and the color differences.
Yep.
Great map.
Helpful.
And I was using those little icons too. This game is never not rad and gnarly. Above all, that's what I note about what I love about this game. I do have dislikes too. I share a lot of your dislikes. I think all relics, and some rosary beads should be permanent upgrades.
I agree.
Don't make me switch between them.
Yep.
Why are there 7 relics and I can only equip 3 of them and I just always want them on? Like, there's no point in making me go back and switch them. Just have them be permanent upgrades.
I think, like toe uplifted from dirt. That should be a permanent rosary bead.
Yes.
All relics.
So I fiddle. I fiddle around with this stuff. I don't want to fiddle. I want to just play this game. Too many missable tasks are happening, and there are too many dependencies between quest lines. So I think of the Mediterranean diet quest line. If you mess that up, and it's easy to do that, it affects other side stories, and you can't get 100% in this game. And I think that's unfortunate because I just want to be able to sit down with this game without a second screen with the whole guide, the step-by-step guide of what I should avoid missing off the side. That can be distracting. I just want to play this game. I don't want to worry about what I'm messing up permanently that can so easily be messed up permanently. Also, like you, I don't get completely invested in this world because of the way the text is written. It writes like at a level that's so much up here, and
Yeah.
we talk down here.
Yeah.
And so it's kind of like reading Shakespeare. I'm trying to interpret things. You're even getting this in the opening moments in the cutscene. And bravo to them for really sticking to that personality. But I don't get sucked in because of the way it's written. And then there are some rare glitches I ran into.
Ooh.
There were 2 boss fights where I got hit by the boss
Uh-huh.
and I was unable to do any inputs.
Whoa.
There was one where I couldn't move and one where I could move but couldn't use any attacks. So,
wow.
and this is totally a glitch. This is not like an attack the boss is doing to weaken me
Of course.
because it didn't
Yeah.
go away and it didn't happen on any other attempt. I could tell it was a glitch.
Yeah, I had some glitches too, and I took some videos, and I can show you later.
Okay,
but-
yeah, I actually took a video of this next one, which was I fell through the floor at one point.
I did
that
that
happen to
twice.
You did that happened to you twice. And it was actually when I was jumping from a platform onto the ground below. Right before I hit the platform below or the ground below, I paused to change a rosary bead. And then when I unpaused, I fell through the floor. So it felt like I accidentally became like an AGDQ streamer, like breaking the game, like exploiting the game.
Wow.
Like I was under the floor and I was moving and the stage was scrolling
Yeah.
like I was in it, but I was nowhere to be found.
Uh-huh.
And then I just died.
Yeah.
You
Yep.
know? So that happened to you.
Yeah, I died. I fell off the screen, and I was able to move inside the floor. Like I could see myself.
Oh, I couldn't see myself.
Yeah, I could see myself, and then I tried to walk through a door, essentially.
Yeah.
What would have been a door, died.
And it triggers like the endless pit
Yep.
or whatever. Yeah.
And then another time I fell through the floor and died, but then I was still on the death screen, but you could hear the penitent one like reviving, but then I died again, and then I died again.
Yeah, you talked about this
Yes.
in my stream. I think.
Yeah.
Yes.
I died 3 times on one death, so that was like a lot of guilt to
so
recover.
you had a lot of guilt.
Yeah.
And the guilt wasn't all in one place.
Yeah.
That's frustrating. But that's all my dislikes. Blasphemous is pretty much up there with Hollow Knight in terms of being a Metroidvania with an immersive world, a beautiful soundscape, and haunting lore. It has top shelf pixel art. Its combat is a mostly satisfying difficulty all the way through. My complaints are pretty minor because I did play this game for 30 hours and I only had a handful of dislikes. Loving this game is a huge surprise for me. Didn't expect to love it this much. I also rated a 9.5 out of 10.
I knew it.
You
I
called
told you during your stream that I was like, I'm pretty sure our score is going to be the same.
Yeah. And there was a time where I thought about a 10, but then I settled on a 9.5 pretty soon after that. And this is in my top 100 indie games, very
Yep.
high.
I've got mine too.
Mine is, for me, Blasphemous is now at my number 13.
13.
It is one place above Hades and it's one place below Venba.
Okay.
my
Is this indie games?
Indie games.
Okay.
Indie games. On my top 100 games list, well, it's going to take me a second to find that. Where is it on your list?
Okay. So I don't have my indie games list set up yet. I am going to start that now.
Oh.
I did add both games today to my list. I put Ghost Song in
Ooh.
at 73.
Okay, that's respectable. Yeah.
It's right above Mega Man 3 and right below Cyber Troopers Virtual On.
Okay.
And then Blasphemous is quite a bit higher at 27, which is
Nice.
right below Bat Boy and right above Mega Man 04.
Wow. And then on my top 100 overall games list, like indie and non-indie, it's my number 44.
Yes. So
it's in
yeah,
my top
very
50.
high. I knocked off, so the games that got knocked off today, I actually wrote this down. Gal Gunvolt Burst, which was
Okay.
just like barely hanging on there for a while.
R.I.P.
And then Pokemon Soul Silver, which is going to break a lot of Pokemon fans' hearts.
F's in the chat. Shout out to those games though. So yeah, the big surprise for me is that I ended up loving this. Another big surprise is that this game is much more on the Metroidvania side for me than on the Souls-like side. And this isn't something we've talked about yet as far as genre classification, but when you go to this game on Steam, for instance, the user-defined tags will tag this game as a Souls-like, as well as its sequel, Blasphemous 2. I think because it's seen as a difficult game and that it also takes place in this particular world that is dreadful. It's a dreadful world.
Yeah.
And I think that's like a hallmark of Souls-like games. But do you think this classification is justified? I know you haven't really played these kinds of games as much, but do you think it has to do with the difficulty, or is it the tone and the violence, or is it a mixture? Is it hard to define for you? Do you agree?
I don't know that I do agree necessarily because there are a lot of other Metroidvanias that have, frankly, harder bosses. And I think the bosses are what make Souls-like hard, right? Like it's not minor enemies and stuff.
Yeah, Souls-likes also have punishing worlds too.
Okay.
Like
Okay.
it's an arduous process sometimes to get to a boss, but then the bosses themselves are also difficult. They're the most difficult part, but the worlds are killing you too.
Yeah. Okay. Well, maybe.
Yeah.
Maybe then, but honestly, I think most of the bosses in Ghost Song are harder than the bosses I faced
Really?
in
Okay.
Blasphemous. Like, don't get me wrong, Blasphemous is hard,
It
like
is.
all throughout. It is punishing, especially at the beginning. But you do like reach that point where, like you said, it's not so terrifying to get through. Like up through getting through the charred visage facility,
Mhm.
I was like, oh God, this game is so hard. But after that, like everything else seemed like way easier
It kind
compared
of
to
went
that.
downhill, didn't it?
Yeah. It was just like, oh,
Maybe with like some spikes upward here and there, but then it went back down.
yeah, I agree. That's
Yeah.
how it was for me. And yeah, like I said, I think the bosses in this game are just as hard or easier than a lot of other Metroidvanias I've played. I don't think it's that bad. So I don't know about Souls-like.
I would first and foremost, like far in first place, call this a Metroidvania when it comes to a genre or a subgenre. But I understand the Souls-like classification when it comes to this dreadful world. I think that's part of what's informing people's opinion on it. And I think there's like this perception that it is super uber hard, but it ended up being a lot more. It feels weird to use the word approachable with this game.
Mhm.
But when it comes to just straight difficulty of getting to the credits, I've had a tougher time in far more mini games than Blasphemous.
Okay, so Bopo, with this game under our belt now, what does this game do maybe more successfully than other Metroidvanias that you've played?
I mean, for better or worse, the violence and the gore stuff. Like I don't know that I can think of a Metroidvania with this depiction like this graphic of an approach. Also, I think like in a lot of ways subverting our expectations as far as what upgrades we'll get.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm going to give a minor spoiler about
I know what you're about to say. I
about
think.
about something we don't get in this game.
Yeah.
Okay, so if it's a minor spoiler, but if you care about that, skip ahead like 60 seconds. But in this game, we don't get a double jump.
And there are so many hints that one is coming.
I know.
Yeah.
What
it
was
nuts.
a hint for you? Well, like was it just seeing platforms?
So I remember specifically there was one elevator that we take at the end of a section, and we take it down and we scroll past all of these secrets. And there's one like right toward the bottom of the elevator that's just out of reach of your jump.
Yeah, it's 2 jumps away.
Yeah. And so I'm like, oh, I'm getting one of those later. Instead, we fall down a pit endlessly, except we don't die at the end.
Yeah. So you either use that linen that we talked about, or we use the blood perpetuated in sand, or we use the 3 gnarled tongues to build the vine things to get to things. So this game is really good at just taking what I know from other Metroidvanias and applying that in a lot of ways, but also switching up the formula. I do really appreciate that. Did you have other observations about what this game excels at?
Yeah, so for me, it really is even more simple. It's like the map. I think the map does a great job of like cluing you in to not cluing you into where you need to go, but always reminding you of what is left undone. Like even if you've been to a room, it will keep a lot of that room unexplored. And that paired with the name of the place being listed,
Yes.
it helps you to remember like, so why didn't I explore the entirety of that room? What was in that room? Oh, I remember there was some creepy man behind a cage pouring stuff on me, but I couldn't get behind that cage.
I
Maybe
hate-
I can now.
If I had a nickel, man, for every time Creepy Man was pouring stuff on me. Totally. I had a better time remembering what was generally left
Yeah.
when I reached a stopping point in an area. And I forget that stuff when I play other Metroid games.
And I think if I may now extrapolate based on what happened to me in Ghost Song, I think that it keeps snacks locked behind doors as opposed to like
meals.
full sections locked
Yeah.
behind a door. That's what Ghost Song was doing to me. Here, it's just a small section of the map that's still trapped behind an obstacle. And I think that helps a lot.
Then there are the bosses. There are more bosses here than I actually expected, but not like a crazy amount like Hollow Knight. You know, I
Mhm.
think it's probably the perfect amount for me. Like not overwhelming, not underwhelming, perfectly whelming number of bosses. And I highlight a couple that I really like. And there's one that I think you have an anecdote about that I'm not sure what it is yet, but it's Esdras of the Anointed Legion. This is
Yeah.
the boss you face on the bridge. What went on here?
Okay, so the whole time you were fighting him, I was watching your stream when you were fighting him. I won't say that you were struggling, but it was hard.
It's hard. This was the first boss in the game where I felt like the game was challenging me.
Okay. I didn't fight him at all.
How?
Um,
Did you do a skip?
No. If so, unfortunately, this did lock me out of a trophy, and I didn't know that.
Oh no.
But I visited his sister's tomb.
Is that far in like the west?
Yeah. So I
Yeah,
visited his
cool.
sister's tomb before going to the bridge where you fight him.
Oh.
And so if you visit his sister's tomb first, she gives you this item that like proves you're blessed by her or something. So that was it. I didn't have to fight him at all.
Wow. Okay. So you took this item to him and he was just like, okay, come
Yeah.
on through. Cool.
yeah, pretty
Wow.
much.
That's awesome.
He was doing his whole macho grandstanding thing. And
Your favorite?
Yeah. I will strike you down or
Yeah.
whatever, penitent one. And then
Yes.
he just like stops. He's like, oh, you have my sister's thingamabob.
Yeah.
And
I was cracking up during my stream because he kept, every time I died, his like last line he would say before the next attempt was always like, on your guard, penitent one. And I just thought that was so funny.
he's
So goofy.
he's like the Theseus of this
He
game.
is, yes. He's brash. He's brash.
On your
heck.
guard, blackguard.
Yeah, I love, honestly, that's another great voice performance for me. I remember exactly what that voice sounds
It's
like.
very strong, yeah. But yeah, if we're talking about like favorite bosses, Trey and Angustius.
Yes. Is that a
Um,
V?
Trey and Angustius. It's like a trio of specter ladies.
Yeah.
And they throw things at you.
Yeah.
It was a cool boss fight. I loved it.
They're similar to the Mantis Lords from Hollow Knight.
Yeah, they're Mantis Lords, but they're on moving platforms and they float.
Yes.
Uh,
They were satisfying. I forgot about them. but
that
they were
was
satisfying.
that was probably my favorite boss. I felt the most satisfaction from defeating Kirsey, the flame dude.
Yes, in the underground or in the prison place.
Yeah, I had a lot of satisfaction from defeating that. And then I absolutely hated being in the same room as Exposito, Scion of Abjuration.
Abjuration.
Abjuration. I hate these names so much. Yeah, I don't like this boss at all.
Why? Why?
Because
It's a big baby.
it's a big baby, and it sounds just like my 1-year-old.
You play games to escape.
Well, it's not. I play games to not kill babies.
That's fair. That's fair. It
Um,
is a giant baby that you're fighting, and it's like blinded. It's got like a wrap around its eyes.
Yeah,
And there's a big snake thing, and
yeah.
it's weird.
It was too upsetting for me. I was happy for it to be done. I don't want to do it again,
Fair.
but I do have to.
Fair. I put this in my list because it's just memorable as a visual.
Super. Yeah.
Like indelible right there. And then Melchiades, the exhumed archbishop, I put this in my list too, just because like while this was happening, people in my chat were commenting that it was like a super cool design. And I agree. Like I love how this boss looks. And then I put Sirpes, the giant snake. Took me a lot of tries. I did manage to beat this one. it took a lot of blocking. It was teaching me to block again.
Mm-hmm.
We haven't mentioned this yet, but you can block. You
Oh,
can
yeah.
parry and block things
Yeah.
and do execution moves sometimes when you parry and then riposte. But Sirpes is like much more trivialized if you know its patterns and then you just block at the right moment. It pushes you all the way across the screen, but you don't take damage. So that felt good to figure out eventually. It took me a lot of tries. So yeah, I guess that's my list. A lot of answers there, but this game has lots of good bosses in my opinion. There's the process of 100%ing the game too. I was able to do this, took a long time. I was at this point, Disco, where I felt a little hopeless. There's your map, right?
Mhm.
That where you can get up to 100%. I'm not talking about that. I'm talking about your save file, which has everything. After I did the 2 endings, my save file was at 99.95%.
Oh, gross.
And I didn't understand where the last 0.05% came from. And I was so scared that I missed something.
Yeah.
And it turned out I needed to 100% the map, but I couldn't find the last room I needed for like 5 hours. I was running around this map forever. There are like a handful of rooms that everybody misses one of these eventually. The one I missed was the room with the painting of the bowl where you go for the rewards for finding the babies. You know what I'm talking about?
Yeah.
And there's a hidden room to the left of that. You have to slide to get to it.
Ooh,
That's the room I missed.
I don't know if I've done that.
And it is an amazingly cool room.
Okay.
It is a cool room. It's one of my favorite rooms.
I
in the
don't know
game.
if I've done
it
that.
It has paintings in it, so I'll just leave it at that.
Okay.
Yeah.
I don't think I have done that.
Yeah. And speaking of paintings, there are fun little Easter eggs in this game. Like there's a
Yeah.
painting. We have a new friend named Dimmy
Yes.
who joined us during our streams, and they had played Blasphemous a lot. And they were pointing out little Easter eggs like there's a famous like botched restoration of a painting of Jesus. And this game has not the original painting, but it has in one of its rooms with lots of paintings in it, it has that botched version.
Yeah.
As like a little fun gag, but it's never referenced or looked at or attention isn't called to it. So I, there could be tons more of that kind of thing going on too.
Yeah.
And then the vine thing, the 3 gnarled tongues. I didn't find that forever, but you had an easier time with it, it sounds like.
Well, okay, so here's the thing. You found the character that gives the initial item to you way before I did.
Yeah, the hairy egg.
I only knew about that character because of you. And then from there, I was able to figure out what to do with it well before you were able to get the vine jump.
You knew like A and C and you needed my B, or you knew B and C and you needed my A.
Exactly. Yes.
Yeah, that's just goes to show that 2 different players can discover things in wildly different orders.
Oh yeah, very, very different orders.
Yeah.
So
cool. So like, are you going to 100% this game? Are you going to try to platinum it?
I mean,
eventually?
that's the plan. That's always the plan with every game that I play on my main profile, and I did play this on my main profile. So always the plan.
Cool.
I have some shorter games this season. Maybe I'll get to it.
Yeah.
I don't think the speed run is in the cards for this season, but
yeah, same. Because that's just going to take some dedicated focus that I don't think I can commit to yet. But 2 things I would just watch out for. Obviously, the Mediterranean Diet trophy with all of its like tendrils and everything throughout the game. And then the map. If you're like me and you're at 99% of your map and you don't know where the last thing is, I can maybe point you to some rooms that were helpful for me to find, I guess. Yeah, that is a wonderful game, a game we both clearly really love. And
it sounds like the sequel is a lot more polished. So
okay. And I put it on our featured games list. Do you approve?
I approve.
Okay, so that'll be a featured game that we played someday. Probably not soon, but someday. DiscoCola, thank you for picking that game. It's very good.
I've been looking forward to playing it for a long time. It's just it's so long. Like that's why our break felt so short too, is that we had to start this one pretty quick.
Yeah, but I'm so glad it was something we both love. That's our review of Blasphemous. You can play it on PC, Mac, Linux, Switch, PlayStation 4, and Xbox One. We both rated it a 9.5. That's the end of this episode of Underplayed. You can find more of our episodes at kzum.org/underplayed and on common podcast platforms like Spotify or Apple Podcasts. Our music was composed by Jack Rodenberg. Our art comes from Oni Mochi. Underplayed is on Twitter Instagram and Threads at Underplayed Pod. You can find me in those places at BoPo. That's BO_PO.
I am in all of those places as well at the username DiscoCola. You can find Underplayed on Twitch, twitch.tv/Underplayed Podcast, where by the time this is out, we will have finished Castle Crashers, but we will premiere all of our episodes the night before they release on all of the podcast services. So check it out and chat with us while we are doing an early premiere.
Next time, we will have 2 more secret games to review, and our featured game will be Castle Crashers Remastered, a co-op hack-and-slash game developed by the Behemoth. Until then, everyone, keep on playing.